Welcome to yet another episode of Level Up Podcast. And I'm your host, Malti. I am a fractional CPO and a product leadership coach. Today, with me, I have Sonali Nanda, who's a senior product leader. And when I was thinking about the topics, I could think none other than product leadership. Sonali has been a very seasoned product leader, handling teams of varied sizes. So let's delve into this journey with her in this episode of the podcast. Welcome, Sonali.
Hey, thanks, Malti. Thanks for inviting me to the podcast. All
Sure.
right. So
All
let
right.
me, yeah, yep. So I'll just briefly introduce myself. So I currently serve as a senior vice president of product at Exaat. Exaat is a SaaS company in healthcare edutech space, and we build products for educational healthcare. So in the sense, we build products for universities and schools, and then now we are also expanding ourselves to hospital facilities, or medical facilities, but all for the overall education perspective. And our vision is to stitch the all the educational experiences, and how do we improve the productivity of everyone, starting from students to school and faculties to people even after they graduate, and where they go and finally find their job, which is the hospital facilities, right? So that's in a nutshell what we're trying to do there. But let me tell you a little bit about my journey, so that probably gives us a good start to the conversation. So
Absolutely.
I started my product management journey almost, you can say, 13 plus years back, right? When I was doing some startup experiments, when I was still a developer in my formal role. And that's how I started my journey. So quite informal start. And then in a formal way, I started when I joined High Radius out of my B School campus as a junior product manager. Back then on, I had no idea about what a product management role was, right, except for knowing that, okay, you have to build some creative solutions and you have to build it as a product and not as a customized solution. So that's how the beginning was. But I think when I joined High Radius, I had the privilege to work across different products, across different journeys, whether it was 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, scaled products, launched products, worked across different kind of problem statements, like how do you make customers happy, how do you launch innovation side of the product, how do you make a technological advancement to the product, like you have solved the product without AI, how do you solve the same problem with AI, as an example, and so on and so forth. So having worked across these different kind of problem statements, which I got an opportunity to, I think I reached a phase in my career quite early, because it was a startup world, which was around 2016-17, when I started taking over a product portfolio, right? So that was like a group of products, and I had two product managers reporting to me at that point to begin with. But very soon that started growing, and I started getting opportunities from the same company to take over leadership roles across multiple different kind of products. That means I had products in 0 to 1 journey, 1 to 10 journey, 10 to 100 journey, and probably 100 plus journey. So imagine like you have 20 plus product managers, and each of them is playing a different kind of a role. And that is when I had gravitated myself with multiple levels towards AVP of product management. My role was to context switch across these different journeys and make the overall portfolio successful. And then came some adjacent roles, like while I was holding the product management role, I also got a unique opportunity to set up a documentation team, right, or guide a UX team, or play the role of a pseudo in delivery manager when the engineering manager was not present, start the product operations function, which was back then in my company not even called product operations to begin with, and so on and so forth. So these adjacent capabilities which I had executed during my journey helped me to get into a further role in my career, wherein I became a VP of product, and now I was not just leading one product portfolio from a PM leadership. capability, but also leading the overall portfolio from multiple function leadership with respect to the product. So that means I had product management, engineering, data science, product operations, documentation, etc., which started rolling up to me. The challenge there was to start everything from scratch and build a complete unit of its own. So that's how I served around 4 years as a VP of product at Hyridius. Built the organization, scaled it up, made it what it was supposed to be. And then I was like, okay, but 10 plus years now, I think I need to look out for something else in my career. And that is when I stepped out of Hyridius, pretty with a lot of gratitude, I would say, and a fulfilling journey to say, okay, what next? I now wanted to focus on maybe more of a role towards a CPO path, right? And hence I took this role in Exat, which was more aligned with my goals and aspirations. Yeah, so here at Exact, I have a relatively smaller team, not as big as what I had in Hyridius, but I think from a magnitude of impact which I'm getting to create is much bigger. So here I have a unique challenge of how do you lead a smaller team and create a much bigger impact. And again, I started my journey here just with product management team, but now I have several other functions within product. But I don't own technology here. We do have a CTO who works, as a parallel wing leading the technology organization. So that's a brief about my journey so far. And in this journey, what has also happened is I've started becoming a coach, not as active as you, Malti, but in some way or the other to give back to the society. So I'll pause here. That's an intro about myself.
Yeah, no, but that's an incredible journey of growth. And I'm so glad that, you started at a time when not many people knew what was product management. And you have had such an amazing stint, and especially going through multiple types, I would say, as you said, 0 to 1, you're scaling up on the other side, and you're talking to a lot of different teams which are probably complementing to the product team, but probably they have their own line of path of growth. So I think that's very commendable. So first of all, kudos to you, Sonali, for raising up the bar for all the women product leaders. So I'll definitely would like to say that. So actually, since and since you kind of brought up that point, right, Sonali? So as a product leader, right? I mean, there could be people who at one point of time were probably your peers, and now with your growth, number one, like they are reporting into you now. Like that's
Yeah,
one point. Then there is so much of context switching which is happening when there are different kind of portfolios which are converging up to you.
yeah.
So, as a product leader, how do you dealt with so much of variations on a day-to-day basis? How did you deal with them? What
Yeah.
was your mantra there?
No, I think great question, Malti. I'll be very honest. That was a pivotal moment on my career when this switch happened, because you always aspire to, oh, I'll just own different product portfolios. But when suddenly different functions start getting added to your portfolio, it's a whole different experience. It's overwhelming and challenging, but I think I thoroughly enjoyed that. But I'll tell you what helped me or helps me there. Right? I think the number one thing is empathizing and understanding the teams you're working with, right? Suddenly when you are a PM leader and you are now having a UX leader reporting to you, or you have like a documentation leader reporting to you, and if they have never reported to you, then they suddenly start feeling that, oh, you will always be biased towards product managers, right? Because that's how they have seen you so far. So it's important to first of all set expectations and a tone with them where you explain to them that, hey, I understand that my role has changed, and you need to also understand that I'm not going to be just a PM leader. When I'm speaking, I'm also speaking on your behalf and their behalf, and so on and so forth. So that expectation setting is important. Understanding every team's capabilities, wishes, their motivation factors, right, is again another very important thing to do. Right, a lot of times we struggle, right, if we don't understand every team. Like a technical writer is a creative person, right? The way they would want to do a team outing, as simple as that, is very different probably from how an engineer might want to do or how a product manager might want to do.
Right.
And what gives success or kick in your job to a product manager may not be same for a UX person or a tech writer. So understanding what is the thing which gives them that energy, motivation, passion, brings them to work, and what can be disappointing factors for them. Understanding them more as a human being becomes extremely important, and I had to do that every time I took over these additional teams in my career. The third thing is also equipping yourself with those skill set, right? When you are leading a team, I always believe in being a hands-on leader. So I have done hands-on as a product manager, but let's say I have not done hands-on as a tech writer or as a UX person, or as, let's say, even when I led engineering, I was not a hands-on engineering leader. I was a developer long time back in my career. So it is important still to be a little hands on. So acquiring that subject matter expertise, to be able to speak their language, to be able to give them specific guidance in their fields, and hence a lot of reading, education, sometimes learning from them also, and being humble to them that, hey, this is not something which I know, and I want to learn from you, right, on this matter, so that I can help you better. But I think more importantly, leading them towards their success by asking those logical questions and seeing if they're all motivated towards a overall product goal. So those are the kind of things which I feel is very important to gain respect with these different teams, and taking them all together. I always tell my team that, hey, we are all part of an orchestra band where each of you is playing a different music instrument or singing a different genre, and my role is to take all of you together and create that music, right? So that's my role. I'm not a violin specialist. I'm not a harmonium specialist, but I'm the one who is trying to take you all together to create that music, and that's my role. So that's how I try to explain it to the team. But it's a learning. I would say I'm still learning. So I read a lot of books on these things. I read. And I try to practice it, and I'm still learning.
Wow. No, I think that's a great metaphor of being what you said as an orchestrator, trying to bring in the synchronization and the outcome to look at as a melodious music that you all are, symphony creating together.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, in that, further delving a little deeper over there,
Yeah. Yeah.
Sonali. Now, each one of them comes with their own, I would say, priorities, right?
Yes.
And I know that the primary objective for most of the organizations is that, okay, hey, how do you make that next big innovation? Hey, how do you make continue to monetize with what you have out there,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
those are some very in the world of such a heavy business driven and having such a heterogeneous team, how do you foster innovation and creativity as a ongoing thing and not like a one time thing that I do it for a few months in a year?
Yeah. No, I think very good question, and that's a daily challenge which I believe every product leader would be going through, not just you or me. I'm sure everyone goes through the same. Uh,
Yes.
so, uh, so I do first of all take care of some of the practical techniques which I believe a lot of them might be doing, but it's still important to iterate, right? So one important thing is breaking the inertia of day to day stuff, right?
Hmm.
Because a lot of times when you have long term goals, long term outcomes, but then when you come to day to day world, you are stuck in, oh, I have a release to look forward to, I have a competition analysis to be done, competitor analysis and submitted, or I have to do the UX of this user story and submitted, or I have to write the documentation for this release and submit it, and so and so forth. So you, when it comes at an activity level, it becomes to some extent, I would say, non-innovative, or more mechanical way of looking at things, because there are also timelines and deadlines which you have to adhere to. And that is where I think people more or less forget to be innovative and creative, and or they say, oh, we don't have time for that, right? So my role there, what I try to do is on a day-to-day basis, try and reinforce this message in multiple ways whenever I'm talking to them, coaching them, guiding them, reviewing them, to ask them to break that inertia, right? And how do I ask them? Just to give you an example, if someone is coming to me for a review of a feature or an initiative, and they're jumping into the solution, or I feel they're non-innovative or creative and they could have done a better job, then I start reinforcing the message of what are you trying to solve, what problem are you trying to solve, and have you thought through options, and so on and so forth. So reinforcing is by training, reinforcing by preaching, reinforcing by practicing, reinforcing by day-to-day guidance coaching becomes very, very important to first break that inertia, and that's a continuous thing which I do. Otherwise I don't think we'll get there. The number two thing is, you know making all of them outcome focused versus output focused. A lot of times what happens is, if we are focused on how do I uh, just release this feature better, right? How do I have a successful release? How do I have a great KPI with respect to time and quality of my user story? Then you're very output focused. Or even if you want to build a feature and make it successful and adopted by five clients, you are still to some extent output focused. So explaining the difference between output and outcome and reinforcing that message again and again with the teams is again very, very important, because the moment you start telling them the outcome mindset, you're making the team, in fact every part of the team, focus on a big picture, right? So that pushes them to start becoming creative, right? The third thing which I try to do with them is, sometimes necessity is the mother of innovation, right? And it still exists. So a lot of times when any of these functions come and tell me that, hey, I have this constraint, and this is the only way to do it, I sometimes push them to start, you know taking that constraint into account and start thinking more creatively. And a lot often I find that we get creative solutions when we accept that, okay, we have to live with those constraints. So that is there. Next is, doing innovation workshops within the team, or aligning with the senior leadership to say that, hey, we need to have some innovation thing always going, and not just do what the customer is asking, so that the product team overall is little going ahead of what the market is asking today. So creating that alignment with senior leadership, and then bringing that down to the team, and then working with the team to be able to showcase some of those, and put a case over it of how can it help us, is also important, right? So while the team is doing, and I have to do all of the first one, two, three, which I mentioned on a day to day, the fourth one is also important, wherein I reinforce the same message that, okay, what vision we are trying to solve, what where do we want to be as a company in few years, and what does that mean for us, so that way you are creating some luxury of innovation. I think the other thing is showing some quick results of innovation, right? When you show some quick results of innovation, the leadership is more or less aligned that, okay, we are not talking about some science experiments here, we are talking about some value which these innovation will bring in, or creativity will
Right.
bring in. So that becomes important. And then creating a safety wall for the team, right? I mean, if people need some time to think, and they have some other activities which can be paused for a bit or can be deprioritized so that they get some more thinking time, then my role as a leader also is to fight that battle with whichever stakeholder as required, to try to manage some expectations and give them that psychological safety as well as the time cushion for them to think, because at the end of the day, quality thinking is important for people to be innovative and creative. And if you don't give time, people can't think, right? So it's my role as a leader to create that culture. And also I try to give the same message to my next levels, if they are managers or pod leads or leads, or leaders, to say do the same thing for their own team. So yeah, so it's a continuous process. And what has helped, I would say, is sometimes doing brainstorming sessions, allowing a UX leader to bring in their idea, allowing the PM person to bring in their idea, allowing the data science person to bring in their idea, because a lot of times multiple ideas, when they come together, they create uh, different level of impact, right? People asking questions, debating questions, they should not feel afraid to ask questions, they should not feel afraid to debate among each other. I think those are very important things to even create that culture of innovation and creativity, in my
Yeah, yeah,
opinion.
yeah. I mean, diversity in thinking is a such a crucial factor
Yeah,
from innovation
yeah,
perspective, right? Yeah, and I completely agree, right? A lot of times when companies think about innovation, it is usually a big bang thing, like, okay, let's do a hackathon, okay, let's these summer projects, like let us
yeah,
plan some big POCs. But I mean, it has to be a balance where, as you said,
yeah,
on a daily basis, how do I bring in those pockets on innovation on everything that I do, right? By staying more in the problem space, am I able to bring in multiple ideas and then hash them out and saying this works, this doesn't work, to the
yeah,
time where we say that, okay, let's do something like a workshop and bring in a larger team together, because all the time we don't have the luxury of time and people to say that
yeah,
for everything feature that I'm building, let's bring in all the people into one meeting and do that, right? So it has to
yeah.
be a good balance, as you said, right? So
Correct.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, that takes me to my next conversation thread that I would like to bring in is, right,
Sure,
that
sure.
we as product leaders are kind of constantly dabbling between our taking things to the market, right, and
Yes,
constantly stepping back and saying, okay, now what is that next big thing that we want to do, right?
yes,
So,
yes.
as a product leader, what is your way of managing, speedy execution and strategic product thinking?
Yeah, I think absolutely a great question again. So I feel that, okay, this is how I try to think about it, that my CEO, as an example, should be already thinking 3 years beyond from now. I at least should have the time and energy to think 1 to 2 years from now, if not till 3 years. And my team, like my next level immediate leads, leadership, or senior product person, should be thinking 3 to 6 months from now, if not beyond. And that is where your release planning, half yearly planning, all that becomes super important. What I try to do is create good processes so that the speedy execution can be monitored and can be brought in an execution format like an engine, right? So that way I don't have to indulge myself into speedy executional related activities on a day to day basis, right? I mean, I am still involved, but it's not like my whole day will go there. Okay. So the best way, so some of these small techniques I do there is like creating a process to have a weekly business review, as an example, right, with my team members. Again, a very structured format, knowing what I'm looking for there, and then sometimes the format is growing if you're dealing with a new team, but then doing that. I take the help of product operations team a lot while I do those things, even if it is a one-person team, because that helps to take away the operational activities from the PMs for such meetings, and they can focus on their work. But at the same time, it's giving visibility to everyone, including me. So even if it is like, let's say, a 1.5 hour or 1 hour meeting in a whole week, it gives me a visibility into what is not working out, what can help us. I mean, what can be the bottleneck for us for the next release or next 6 months, or anything which is like short term. So from there, I can then prioritize which are the activities or features or product areas or functions where I need to focus from a speedy execution perspective, or maybe I just need to inspire my next level leaders, right, to do that. So that's where it also tells me how wide and deep I need to go in those areas. So I use that as an identification, and accordingly, I do, my next level of meetings on the speedy execution part. Uh, the other side, which is the strategic thinking, is then it's like, okay, if I have organized my speedy execution part, and if I am okay with that, I mean that's a continuous journey. But then I have to switch off and then spend my own time doing my strategic thinking. But what I also feel that strategic thinking is also not a very individual journey as a product leader, because your next level people will also be aspiring to think or spending some thinking time on strategic thinking. So that's where I at least try to see how can I, free up at least 20%, 30% of the time, if not more, or maybe in some cases 40% based on what initiatives they're working upon, so that they can also be party to this kind of thinking and discussions. And for me to do strategic thinking, I think collaborating with the business leaders, especially on sales, marketing, customer value functions, domain experts, sometimes technology leadership, is very very important to to align all the parties, bring them all together to what is the product portfolio vision we're trying to chase, what are the strategic intents we're trying to chase, is does that make sense or not. But then as you do that, you will have a lot of activities, like you want to do a TAM analysis, or you want to do a new market analysis, or you want to do a competitor analysis. So what I do is I pick some of those activities and distribute it among my PMs who are more aspirational to do some such activities, and they feel more motivated with that, and by doing that you can just get to that a little bit more faster, and then you're balancing out your time on the strategic thinking and the speedy execution. So that's how I do at my level. And when I define the initiatives, I try to always define with the PMs, okay, if 60 to 80% is for now, 20% is always for the future, at least 10 to 20%. So that way, even at a ground level, there is something happening for the future, which are more like POCs, experimentations, thinking, and so on and so forth. So that's in a nutshell how I try to balance multi between both the worlds. But you will always have some weeks and maybe some months where the speedy execution takes up the topmost priority because of some business needs, and then very soon you would have to do a self realization, do a context switching, and say, hey, let me now take a step back now that this is done, and get out of the inertia, and then move to a little bit of thinking mode. So I think identifying when that inertia has to stop and when you navigate to the other zone becomes very very important. And it's, as you know, right, as we climb up to leadership, it's a lonely world. So you would have to be disciplined enough to do that, and I think I try to do my best there as much as possible. I would still say I'm still learning on that part, a lot to learn, but yeah, that's what I try to do.
Yeah, no, I think those are some wonderful, aspects that you touched upon. And you're right. I mean, after a while, you need to put in those guardrails in place so that, and checks and balances in place so that things can run on their own and you can move on to the next big
Yeah,
thing. And at the same
correct.
time, enabling your next level makes
Correct.
your frees up your time
Yeah,
to focus on more strategic aspects, right? So
absolutely.
that yeah, that's the way to do it. I would also completely align with that. And also, Sonali, I mean, since you spoke about coaching, right? I mean,
Yeah.
thankfully, the women in product world, I would say that the diversity ratio probably is not as bad as, let's say, a woman in tech or some of the other industries, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the digital products world. And but still, one of the things which I hear a lot of women, right, especially those who are, let's say, stuck in as a senior PM, and for them to move into that next circle of a director or a group product manager, they always find it very challenging. Sometimes it could be about strategic thinking, sometimes could it be just having those right set of sponsors who can vouch for them. So
Yeah.
since you are also kind of you do a lot of coaching and you are leading
Yeah.
large teams, what would be your advice for them?
Yeah. So I think my first advice is for women to be aspirational and aim higher, right, and believe that they can do it. Because a lot of times people have those aspirations, but these are those small aspirations sitting inside, and it's not literally coming out, right? So it's very important. Second is, I totally understand that the biological clock of women and the corporate clocks are not necessarily going hand in hand. But it's important to still keep learning and acquiring those newer skill sets which you require to do well in your next career. And it is as important as you doing your job. So because a lot of women start getting busy in a lot more personal stuff, sometimes I feel that that will or the intention to learn is not always that high, or they feel they don't have that much of time, and I totally respect that. It's not like people have a lot of time, but even within that time, how do you make time for yourself to do a little bit more learning, little bit more networking, or find easier ways to learn, right? I mean, sometimes you can just talk to people and learn something in 15 minutes rather than doing a course for 3 months. So figuring out smarter ways of learning to upskill your crafts becomes very important. The third is speaking up. Right, once you start believing and you feel you have the crafts, speaking up if you are not getting challenging assignments for whatever reason, right? I mean, every woman goes through their own story in their own world of corporates, right? Sometimes they just could be just a misunderstanding from your manager, or a oversight from your manager, or sometimes it could be more empathy than what is required from your manager for not assigning you challenging tasks because you have some personal responsibilities at home or whatever, right? So it is important for women to speak up if you are in that situation and say that, hey, I'm ready to take my next role, or at least can you help me? What can I do to get to that role, or to do this more challenging assignment? The other thing which I also feel is, for you to move, especially to a group product manager or further leadership, it's required to be more courageous and fearless. That's because as you take up managerial role or leadership role, women and men operate differently. No matter how equal we talk about, they're just different, like by nature. So it is and it is nothing wrong in being different. It's just that the way they operate could, or styles could be different. Now, while I feel the number of women have increased, the you might have, like, you might be leading a team of male product managers, and maybe they just don't know how to work with a female leader, or sometimes there could be unfortunate jealousies or whatever, right, which is happening. Now, women don't necessarily go out and do a lot of networking, which is beyond work, which probably men are a little better at. So figuring out your own ways of building your stakeholder relationships becomes very important for women, for them to climb up the ladder, or do it in your own genuine way, right? I mean, it's not necessary that you have to do a party if your male counterparts are doing a party or hosting a party. If you cannot do a party, it's fine. You can always take out your team, you can genuinely have a conversation with your team, and so on and so forth. So that is something which but it's okay to be fearless. It's okay to be a little bit more thick skinned, and accept criticism, right? If people are being critical to how you operate, but at the same time be cognizant about how you can learn, right? I mean, if you're just thick skinned and you overlook everything which is being told to you, that is also not going to help you grow. So the right balance of taking criticisms as positive, as well as sometimes being just wall to them, is important for us to learn and grow. And I think all these small baby steps helps women transition to next level leadership. I also feel that they can sometimes, women may not be naturally very assertive while they're sitting in a group of people, or they have great opinions and ideas but they just don't speak, and hence people just don't know that they have a great idea. So again, goes back to speaking up in the right forums, and being courageous and fearless, not worry so much if your idea is great or bad. It's okay to make mistakes. Don't have that guilt in mind. When you are moving up to a people manager role, you might make again mistakes, and that's fine, right? I mean, we all learn from mistakes and experiments, and that happens with males and females equally. So there is no reason to feel so guilty or sensitive or overthink about our failures before even we have embraced them, right? So that's what I more or less tell Malti, and that's what I'll tell on this forum also.
Yeah, no, those are some marvelous points. And I think one thing just keeps echoing in every line you said is that it all starts with you, right? So
Yeah,
you have
it
to
does.
own it up and you have to charge yourself and go forward. And I think those are some very, very insightful, tips and advice that you have shared, which definitely would help them not only for the next level, but shaping them in their overall professional arcade.
Journey.
So those
Yeah.
are some very fair. So probably a couple of more thoughts, Sonali.
Sure, sure.
I mean, as a leader, and I don't know if
Yeah.
being a woman leader, it makes it even more difficult. So maybe for some time I'll just keep that hat outside. But see, especially when you are leading such a diverse team, right? For example, at
Yeah.
High Radius, you spoke about you had product ops, you had
Yeah.
design, then you had analytics, and you of course have the whole your product team, right?
Yeah.
So and and these teams are kind of also catering to multiple business units, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it could also be internal users, sometimes it could be your external customers. Now, in terms of aligning your overall product strategy, there
Yeah.
is always, the bucket is always overflowing. There are always hajar things that we want to do, right?
Yeah.
So how did you, what is your style of, managing priorities, managing conflicts when your stakeholders are so diverse, when your next level are also coming from very diverse backgrounds and teams? So how do you
Yeah.
manage that?
Yeah. I think what helps there is what is the overall vision of what you want to do, right? Because, like you rightly said, if everyone comes from diverse experiences, diverse thought processes, diverse functional skill sets, and diverse kind of initiatives they are working upon, right?
Right.
You still need something to unite all of them together, right? And what I
Right.
feel is that's where company goals, product portfolio goals, product goals becomes very, very important. And then making those goals more specific, measurable, not like vague, right? Ensuring that those goals have some level of timeline or some level of measurement metrics baked into it becomes more important, and telling them why that goal is important, right? It is also important to tell them sometimes, let's say, if there is a PM who is working on a core product and then there is a PM who is working on an analytics product, it's important for the PM in the core product to appreciate what the PM in the analytics product line is doing, and vice versa. So similarly, if you're talking about two different functions, let's say a product manager is doing on a 0 to 1 journey, and there is another product manager who is doing, let's say, a 10 to 100 journey, and then you have a UX leader who is working with both the product managers, then it's very important for the UX leader to understand what is the 0 to 1 journey trying to achieve and what is the 10 to 100 journey trying to achieve. And that's the first thing which I try to do, like set that context for everyone. And to set that context, it takes some time. Like you have to work out with your senior leadership, you have to work out with your respective stakeholders, if there are internal teams who you're trying to give the products to, or it is external customers or subject matter experts and so on and so forth, wherein it's important to define what those goals are and ensuring that everyone is aligned with a right level of global prioritization, right? After that, then it becomes initial, like the product line or that specific product specific goals, that okay, what does that now mean for each product, and also what does that mean for each function. So product may define their goals, like the product management team might define their goals, but if you think from a UX person, they might say, oh, well, this is just so much of work to do, and I just don't have bandwidth to take care of all these stories which you're talking about. Then understanding from a UX person what do they want to achieve, what they feel is the most valuable things, and also identifying those goals where their influence is going to be more valuable, like doing the same value versus cost is again important, right? So that's where I'm saying the second layer is putting the product goals and the function goals, so that everyone is very super clear that what each product or module is going to deliver, and what each function should be aspiring to do in that specific quarter or that specific half year. And then everyone should know what each other is doing and why, so that they can appreciate and the cross dependencies are taken care. That takes us further to initiatives, right? Again, you do an initiative, you do a stack ranking, and sometimes you have to go do global stack ranking because you don't have bandwidth in a certain module. You want to take bandwidth from a certain module and do work for another module. Now, both the parties have to be aligned, so you have to go through those conflicts and alignment meetings with the team. But I think driving everyone to the thought process of outcome. Second, telling them that, hey, each of us is a cost, right? I am a cost, my team member is a cost to the company, and every other function is also cost. So how can we use that cost which the company is incurring on us, on the infrastructure and every other function as required, to give the biggest value or the greatest value we can to the customers and to the company is important. So reinforcing the value versus cost metrics in almost every discussion, I would say, to in some way or the other, to bring in that culture or that thought process becomes important. So then what happens is everyone starts thinking like that, and they start doing their own micro prioritizations at their level, saying, how, okay, where do I want to spend my time? And I think the third thing I tell people is, sometimes you have these low hanging fruits which doesn't require so much of research thinking, design from product or even from engineering, and they give a low to medium value or sometimes high value also, depending on where they stand. It is important to think that, okay, if that whatever value you are getting is not worth the cost, then be okay with a little bit 80% level of deliverables there, but rather focus all your energies on where the biggest buck is, right? I mean, which are those big ticket items where you can never go wrong. Like if you are sitting on a legacy product and the product already has issues, or has a lot of backlog of stuff which you need to change, and you're trying to add a minuscule or a minor feature there, even if you want to revamp that entire experience, is not going to add value, because that product is still usable by maybe many users. So you have to do that right trade-off decision, that do I really want to spend that energy and effort. So that is the level of prioritization framework which I try to work with the team. And I always try to see, okay, what in my goal definition are they focused on, what value it is for the customer, like the value props, and what are the value props for the business. Like, we can have a revenue increase for the business, but if that's not going to help the customers, then that's not going to be the right thing to do for the long term. So doing all of this alignment, I think, helps at a macro level. But in spite of that, conflict still happen even with partner teams. Like when engineering used to report to me in high radius, I used to see that as part of my team. When engineering reports to me at Exaat, I see them as a stakeholder, as a big stakeholder and a partner team, and we will still have conflicts. So there again, it is important to coach people to be patient enough, to explain the same goals and the initiatives, the whys of what I'm doing, instill the purpose of what I'm doing, even in your partner functions or the functions, other functions which report to you. And then, again, make them all aligned to the same outcome or initiative. And then sometimes get into the devil of the details of the conflicts, that, okay, why is the conflict still happening? Is that just a misunderstanding? And a lot of times it's with communication, right? I mean, the PM, one party would not have communicated at the right level of depth and breadth which it required to be communicated, and hence the other party is not very very clear, right? Or motivated enough to solve the problem, or understands why this has to be done faster or slower, or with a simple design or complex design. So the moment you wear the hat of your stakeholder and explain them, or the moment you wear the hat of a different function and explain it from both parties as a moderator, then I think things start getting resolved faster. Um, so that's in a brief, I would say, how I try to approach prioritization, and conflict management. But again, it takes a lot of rigor, starting from half yearly planning to quarterly plannings to release plannings to and also at the same time keeping the team a little bit okay to be open and flexible, if especially if you're in a growth product, right? You can't expect what you finalized 6 months back will still be valid after 3 months. Something might have changed. So how do you try to be flexible, and fine balancing that is, I think, important. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the summary is that you have to work on this every single day.
absolutely, absolutely. You have to. And I think to help it scale, it is more important to coach the people under you,
Correct.
to be able to do it. Right. So
Correct. Because
every
it's
time
at every
PM
level.
comes to me with a conflict situation, or a UX person comes to me with a conflict situation, or a tech writer comes to me with a conflict situation, or for that matter, ops, I always start thinking, okay, how can I enable that person to be able to do that job next time by himself or herself, so that I don't have to be in trying to be the person who is resolving the conflict or helping with the prioritization. I'm more aligned, like person who is signing it off, or getting into things where it really requires my time and attention. So
Right.
that is more continuous thing for a product leader, I would say. Conflict, it's very important to see how can your team do it by themselves without you having to be involved. And that takes a lot of one-on-one coaching, sometimes behavioral coaching, sometimes making people aware about what they need, what their goods are and bads are, what are the stakeholders' goods are and bads are, and how can you use context-sensitive intelligence to communicate, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so that I would say a lot of time does go in coaching more than day-to-day handling, so that they can also do that better the
Right.
next time.
No, I think those are some really very, very valuable points, Sonali, that you said, because you cannot be everywhere. So you have to kind of empower and also educate your team,
Exactly.
to be able to run at the same speed at every level, right? But at the same time, be empathetic, build the trust, be flexible, and understand others' perspective, because I think that goes a long way. Because eventually, we all are looking for the same outcome, larger outcome from an
Yes,
organization perspective, right? That
absolutely.
that Yeah, no, I think those were some really amazing insights, Sonali. And I'm glad that, in this conversation, we could touch upon some really very day to day activities that we as product leaders are trying to, help our teams with, and make sure that the organization is kind of speedily moving towards what our aspirations are and what vision is. So I'm sure folks are going to love this conversation.
My pleasure, and thanks, Malti, for inviting me over. It was a great conversation. It was making me reflect the whole journey of what I do.
Oh no, and that's the whole idea, right? Just to kind of
Yeah,
think about and share it, and because what you have already done, there are a lot of folks who can learn from that, so that they don't repeat those mistakes and take the learnings back to their day job.
yep,
Yeah, yep. Thank you so much, Sonali, for being here, and all the best for your new endeavors.
yep. Thanks a lot, Malti.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah, bye.